like everything that's worthwhile is challenging, and everything that's worthwhile takes 150 mistakes to get it right one time. And that one time is really special and magical, but there's a lot of, there's 140 less exciting things. And that's what you're saying with like pros running 10-minute miles, or, the workouts that you don't hit over and over again.
Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspects of running and what helps people to achieve success, however they define it, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. Jumpstart your running goals in 2023 with Microcosm Coaching. We're in it for the long run. Through breakthroughs, setbacks, and plateaus, your coach will guide you through the ups and downs in an athletic life. Whether you're running your first 5K or 10th 100-miler, Microcosm Coaching has personalized training that will help you reach your goals. My friends Zoe, TJ, and the whole crew over at Microcosm Coaching believe in the power of support through community, offering a multidisciplinary team of coaches with expertise in nutrition, mental health, and performance that will help you sustain your love for running long term. I've chosen to work with them as a sponsor of the podcast because they're amazing humans, and I've seen so many of their athletes thrive under their guidance. Microcosm Coaching offers individualized training plans and accountability through daily feedback. Your Microcosm coach will hold you accountable to your running potential. Find out more at microcosm-coaching.com and let them know I sent you. Going on 4 years now, For the Long Run has continued to grow with the help of listeners like you and sponsors that believe in what we're doing. Goodr has been with us since March of 2021, and I'm excited to share that they've just released ski goggles. These shades are not only the best looking frames on any snow-capped mountain, they're also Goodr's first official step into winter sports. With wraparound frames that won't fog up while you're sending it down the mountain, dodging Yetis, or going extreme at the ski lodge with your hot toddy, Goodr's Snow G's will keep you covered, literally. They're wraparound frames after all. And they're priced at $75. If you want to support the show and grab a pair, Goodr is giving you free shipping on your order. There's a link in the show notes, and you can go to goodr.com/FTLR, which is valid for any product on their website. And welcome back. I have Andy Wacker joining from Canada today, normally of Boulder, Colorado, but today calling in from Canada. Andy, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
You're welcome. It's good to be here.
Awesome. The first question is always a tough one. Who is Andy?
Oh man, that is a hard one. I'm a pro trail runner who lives in Boulder, Colorado. I was a middle school math teacher for the last 3 years, so that's kind of part of my life. And just someone who's passionate about giving back to the sport of trail running at this point.
Cool. Well, you're up to some really cool things, and I'm sure we'll get to that. But let's dial it back a few years, maybe to your own middle school experience. But do you remember your first run?
Well, I don't know if this was my first run, but I do remember I was joining my middle school cross country team, and it was going to happen in like August, and I had talked to like the coach, and he was like, yeah, you should like run a little bit before. And my only experience was running the, what's it called? The Presidential Physical Fitness Challenge, where you just race a mile. So basically for like a week leading up to my first cross country season, I would go over to this road near my house that was like approximately a mile, and I would run it as hard as I could and try to beat my time every day.
Nice. And you enjoyed that?
Oh yeah, it was fun. So obviously not a good training technique, but it was fun doing that. And it was fun being on cross country and never gave it up. And
fast forward a few years, you're running a lot of trails. Maybe you've honed in on your approach to training so that you're not just going 100% all the time. But talk to me about the evolution of your running and training since then.
Yeah, kind of a quick recap would be, ran in high school and did well. I was won a couple state titles or something like that, and then ended up running basically as a walk-on at the University of Colorado. So that's what brought me to Boulder. There, I was a 2-time All-American in cross country, and just really liked my experience and made a lot of friends and connections. Continued running in Boulder, kind of doing all sorts of things, cross country, roads, track, you name it. and eventually kind of found my niche, which is kind of balancing my time mostly between a road season in the spring and a trail season in the summer, basically.
And how did you land on that split? And the reason I ask is for the last few years, that's pretty much been what I've done as well. And I really like the balance.
Yeah. I think one thing that's really important to me is, well, I'm 34 years old, and I think that like a lot of athletes I see, especially who are my age, they just like get sick of running and it's not enjoyable to them anymore. So one thing that's always been important to me is to maybe switch up seasons because I think it keeps it fresh. And I think it just like it gives you a new goal and a new motivation, and it really feels right when you're kind of getting sick of doing whatever it is, fast road workouts, then you're able to go jump on a beautiful trail all summer. And then you're right in the winter when you're like, man, the trails are icy and I'm kind of sick of that. Just want to run faster and get some of these miles going. Then you can switch back. So it's always nice just to have that balance.
Yeah. And your focus on the trail side of things is mostly sub ultra. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've run a couple 50Ks, but yeah, I specialize in sub ultra.
Do you find any pressure to go longer, particularly in this space of sponsored athletes, people who, if you look at, ultra runner, or I guess ultra runner of the year is by definition ultras, but I guess that's the point. Like when I got into running, I felt compelled to run a marathon because that's what everyone was doing. It may or may not have actually been true, but that was the perception. Do you feel any sort of pressure to run those 50Ks and longer?
I think there is some pressure, and I know people ask me about it all the time. They're like, "Hey, when are you going to run a 100K or 100 miler?" And I'm just pretty comfortable in my own skin and doing my own thing, and I know that what's best for me. I'm not excluding that maybe in the future I will, but I really enjoy and have had a lot of success doing 10K marathon on the trails, and so I'm just going to keep on doing what I enjoy because I think that's what's the most important is just loving the process of running and training.
Talk to me about running a 10K on the trails. Like I don't have enough foot skills to to do such a thing. I spent 2 months in Breckenridge, and then back to Boston. Started run trails in Boston. I was like stupid fit, and I couldn't run trails because I was like too fit to run on like East Coast trails.
Yeah, well, I guess it like, really depends. Like, I love kind of like the classic mountain running format, which is 10K, where you basically run up a mountain and then run back down as fast as you can. And kind of speaking to your point, one thing that I always find that's really funny is when you come off of road season and your foot speed's just ridiculously high, you actually like run off the trail because you're going too fast on downhill.
Yeah.
So you'll be hitting it so fast, it's like really hard to keep it going, and keep that like skill balanced with that speed. But yeah, just like the intensity is so high, it makes it really interesting.
I love that. And then on the flip side, we went on a run together in Tahoe, and you were introduced as the slowest fast runner in Boulder in regards to your easy runs. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, that was a good luck run, kind of. By the way, we were running with my wife and a couple other people, but we were basically, it was the day between the VK at Broken Arrow and the 26K, and we were like walking up a mountain, and turned out well because I ran the VK okay and ran the 26K pretty well. But yeah, I think being the slowest fast runner in Boulder or whatever, yeah, I don't think. Believe pretty strongly in a training philosophy of like keep your hard days hard and your easy days easy. And if it's the day before a race and you're going up a big mountain, like who cares if you need to walk? Like just keep it fresh and make sure that you're able to recover and feel good for when you do go hard. And so I run a lot of like 9 or 10 minute miles, or don't even look at the watch, doesn't matter. So I think it's important just especially like as a trail runner, like throw out the watch, doesn't matter. Like it's important just to be out there and doing what you do and feel like you're enjoying it and recovering it on the easy days, and then feel like you're pushing it on the hard days.
Not a good statement if you're pursuing a Garmin or Cora sponsorship, but a
great statement. Shoot. Well, I mean, don't throw it out. I always wear it, but you don't have to look at it every 10 seconds.
I'm kidding. Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's fascinating being here and seeing what elites do. Less so on their hard days, because like that's impressive, but it's even more impressive when they're when they respect the training enough to slow down on the easy days. And there are Olympians, and so many pro athletes here that I run with on their easy days, and it's my hard day, and or some version of that. And it's really cool to see how people sort of find different people to run with in order to get the training stimulus that they're looking for. Has that always been the case for you, that you've respected the easy days easy, hard days hard dichotomy?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, going to see you, Mark Watmore is a pretty strong believer in that. But I think I do remember in college, we were a lot more 7-minute miles was easy. It was like our easy pace. And if you're going flat all the time as a pro road kind of person or track kind of runner, maybe that makes more sense. But so we'd probably get in trouble if we went slower than 7 minutes. Yeah, definitely post collegiately is just what I needed to be able to recover and make the next workout happen.
Cool. We're gonna have to edit the Garmin and Coros to Suunto, by the way. I made a mistake on that one. It's so interesting to see how pro athletes have like accepted this dichotomy, where amateur athletes, it's something that like there's a lot of room for improvement. And if you think about it, a professional runner running a 7 or 8 minute mile on their easy runs, it could be 2 minutes slower than marathon pace or 90 seconds slower than marathon pace. And that's a huge range. and and yeah, it's just like, it's one of the things that I made that shift. I used to think, a mile was garbage if you didn't run it faster than 7:30. And that's just a recipe for being injured frequently.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the trail team. First, what is it? And where did the idea of creating community in this act come from?
Sure. So yeah, the trail team is a developmental team that is going to help sponsor 6 young athletes who are kind of up and comers in the sport, who need mentorship, maybe some financial support, so that they can get on the next level. And so it's basically this piece that's missing from what I would say is post collegiate to pro, even though that might not be the case. It might be someone who's not, who's still in college or didn't run in college or didn't go to college, but kind of that age group. So young 20s.
And what will they be getting out of it?
Yeah. So the big things are, I think I've been thinking about this for years and years. And so I just, I kind of wrote down my list of what I think athletes needed. And then I just spent the last month reaching out to everybody I know and a lot of young athletes and asked hey, what do you need? What's the number one thing you need to be successful? And so what I heard was what I'm calling mentorship. And so what that looks like is it's one-on-one time with someone who's an established elite athlete. So think if you're a young woman who's really good at running track and has run some trails, maybe you want to reach out to Grayson Murphy and you're someone who's had success at both of those at the pro level. How do you do it? How do you balance that schedule? What does that look like? Because there's almost no coaches that know what that looks like. And there's also not that many example athletes. And so there's not this pre-written roadmap playbook for these young athletes. And I think that mentorship is really important. And then there's several other things. The second thing is training camps. So what that looks like to me is let's just get together elite athletes and these 6 younger athletes and learn how to run downhill. The elite athletes have that experience. How can we pass on that experience? If that's how to run downhill, how to listen to your body, how to do all these things that we've been doing for 10 years, how can we pass on that knowledge? And then I think here's kind of a list of other things, but one would be just money to get to races, tons of media coverage, because that's so important for young and developing athletes to grow their brand. And then things like coaching, strength training, and gear, I think are kind of at the bottom of the list, but also important.
So are you compiling a roster of mentors part of it? Or is it sort of let me help you get in touch with these people?
Yeah. So right now we kind of have 4 flagship mentors or whatever you want to call it. And that's going to be Grayson Murphy, Adam Peterman, and Ali Mack, and myself. So we're kind of the names on the team, and that's going to be just put on our Instagram in the next couple of days. And then I have, a whole roster of people who I've talked to and who are part of this community that are super willing to help. And I think they're going to help too. So it's going to be find the team and then really have conversations of who's the best person for you to talk to. Like, who do you want to be in 3 years or 5 years? And let's have that open dialogue where maybe you can call this person once a month and say, here's what's on my mind. Like, I'm really having trouble with whatever it is, transitioning from college or from finding a schedule. Because I think those are what's on people's minds, or maybe they're not even thinking about it yet. Like, one conversation I just had was with a young woman who's about to graduate from CU, and she like didn't even know what questions to ask, I think. And I think that's important. And from my own experience, like, I learned so much that first year or two post collegiately, where I really had to reach out to people, and I was like, wow, I'm like a freshman again. Basically, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I need to kind of learn the ropes from the people who do.
Super cool. I'm curious on the media and sponsorship side of things. So I did a podcast with Finn Melanson on Single Track, and we were talking about sponsorship, and he made the offer of, anyone who's listening to this who's a up and coming or current pro athlete, like, who wants guidance on how to navigate all this, message us. And I was like, okay, I'll match that. So we ended up talking to 10 pro athletes about, like, our advice, being the creator or brand side, or like having worked with sponsors. And it was fascinating because I thought we were going to get a bunch of like 22-year-old athletes, but it was like half young and new people and half like very established, been in the sport for 10 years. And they're looking for creative next partnerships, or like athletes who have an apparel sponsor that's a head to toe setup, and they are sort of limited in what they can do. So how do you think outside the box? So it was fascinating exercise to help people, but also to hear what the challenges are and how people aren't thinking in the space. So I'm curious how much of the mentorship or discussion is around like how to stay in the sport financially. And I say this and then acknowledge, like, Grayson in particular is really, really good at this. So it's awesome that she's a part of the program.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, different pros are good at different things. And so kind of acknowledging what you're saying, like, some people, like, they're an athlete, they're really good at being an athlete. And
Right.
so, like, they're not good at being a business person. They don't have an MBA. They're not like someone who is like an influencer. So again, like, I think for the trail team, we're going to reach out to the people, like you're saying, like Grayson, who are good at that, to be able to help with that piece in terms of, I'm calling it something like social media 101. Like, how can we help athletes grow their brand? And man, just moving on with that, like, I think more than social media, or maybe that's a piece of it too, is just like, what are all the forms of media? How can we spread the word about what this is and what we're doing? It's meant to be, like a nonprofit community building thing. So how can we just make sure that people are aware of it so that they can be part of it and be just like this positive influence in the sport? So we're really looking at doing a lot of photos, videos, maybe some, a lot of like Instagram really short videos under 30 seconds, but hopefully we're going to reach out with, and if anyone who's listening to this podcast would love to help, please reach out to me. But we're already talking to some people who do this professionally too, to maybe make some longer stories that we're to be able to share with the trail community. So
super cool. This episode is airing the day before Bandera, and I'm testing out sponsorship of Bandera and their media coverage. So hopefully, people who are tuned into Bandera listen or watch this podcast, and we have a few extra eyeballs and ears on this conversation. So if you're listening and you've come from the podcast coverage, welcome. Hope you stick around, and definitely reach out to Andy if you're speaking your language. So switching, I don't want to switch gears yet. I want to continue on point. So you're 34. You've been in the sport for a while, and you've probably seen this evolution of, okay, I'm an athlete, I want to compete, to, you look at your Instagram bio and you have a handful of sponsors that enable this to continue to happen. I'm curious about your own evolution as a runner and as someone who is good at social media and good at connecting with people, and how that's enhanced, or if that's enhanced, your longevity in the sport and being able to do what you love, which seems to be running. And the balance of social media, and just like hammering beautiful trails.
Yeah, I think it's a balance. I would say people definitely do social media things better than me. I try to share some of my experience. It's easy when you race 25 times a year like I do. So you just take a good picture. Um, Man, with longevity in the sport too, there's just been so many challenges to be honest, like battling injuries, trying to form new sponsorship deals every year. It's stressful, and it's like, it's not the reason I do what I do. I do what I do because I like it. And if I can share that passion and excitement with others, that's awesome. So, but that's more in the background, to be honest, for my personal gratification. So yeah, the media part of it's been interesting. Yeah, just because it's evolving and changing, I think, a lot. But yeah, I think that's definitely something you have to do now. You can't not be present on social media as an athlete. It's difficult. Like you have to do it, and you have to do it somewhat well.
What's been the most surprising change over your years in the sport?
Oh man, I'd say for the better. Trail running's growing. Like specifically, yeah, like short distance trail running in the US is getting massive, and it's amazing. Like more people know and are involved in it. I think I just posted this a couple of weeks ago because it was just like one of my biggest takeaways from this year, from 2022, was that, like, for example, I raced Sears and All in 2017. So that wasn't super long ago, but that was 5 years ago. Sears and All is one of the most popular trail races for those people who don't know. It's about 20 miles long. It's a little shorter than that. Insanely competitive, and it's had this incredible history for 40 plus years of good athletes from all over the world, 40, 50 countries coming in to race this thing. So in 2017, when I first ran it, there were zero professional trail women. There's almost no, American professional trail women. So I think there was maybe zero American women in the race. So I was one of 3 American men in the race, and there was almost no American women. And Pablo Vigil, who's like this guy, this legend who won the race 4 times back in the day, he was like, how can we get people to get to this race? And so I don't think I can take credit for this, but I've been telling everyone in the trail community, like, hey, this is like a really important race. Like, if you're sub ultra, you need to check this out. This is a cool race. It's on the World Cup, which is its own series, and then the Golden Trail Series has adopted it as one of their races too. So it's just kind of one of these races that no matter what you do, if you do shorter races or even longer races, it's on the schedule. But to get to the point, this year we had 3, let's see, it was 2 women in the top 10. Bailey was 6th, Tabor was 10th, and then I think we had 5 women in the top 20 or 25. It was insane. So we just like actually came out and crushed. And so the American women just really just showing off what we have. And it's cool to have to see that develop, and then those athletes to be able to get to these big races abroad.
If you've been enjoying this podcast and can spare 90 seconds of your time today, can you do me a favor? Can you pop over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review? It helps other people find and enjoy the podcast too. Thanks so much. The team at For the Long Run is super proud to share that we will be sponsoring the live race coverage of the Bandera 100K happening on Saturday, January 7th. Tune in to see several prior guests racing 100K in the desert and hear from Jonathan on the broadcast. I'm super proud to partner with Microcosm Coaching as the show's newest sponsor. What I love about their style is that it's coaching the human who runs, not the runner who humans. I've done a handful of group runs with their crew, and I'm good friends with several of their coaches and dietitians. Jumpstart your running goals in 2023 with Microcosm Coaching. They support and empower athletes of all abilities and backgrounds. Microcosm Coaching offers community-centered training with a multidisciplinary team of coaches and athletes all over the world. Their team will help you celebrate the highs and work through the lows in an athletic life and sustain your love for running long term. Microcosm Coaching will hold you accountable to your athletic potential with an evidence-backed, individualized training plan and daily check-ins. They have the support and resources you need to define your values and reach your goals. Find out more at microcosm-coaching.com and let them know I sent you. No slip, no fog, all conditions, all fun. They even have a pair called Après All Day, if that's more your style. Yep, I'm talking about Goodr's first step into winter sports with their snow Gs. They come with 2 polycarbonate lenses, including one for low light conditions, so you can easily swap lenses when conditions change, and trust me, it's an easy swap. They're offering 100% satisfaction guaranteed with 30-day free returns. Goodr is a 100% carbon neutral company with 1% of annual sales going directly to organizations that help make the world a better place. Head to goodr.com/FTLR to get free shipping on the Snow Gs or any other pair. Yeah, I got to get out there. That one looks beautiful. But it's super cool to see the evolution of trail running. I did a survey of the listeners of this audience, and it's 55% trail, 45% road as the focus. Some of that is like chicken or egg. Who are the guests? How are we growing? But when this podcast started, it would have been probably 70-30 in favor of road running. I think that people are realizing that the trails are out there, and like trails and trail racing is growing, and the community is incredible. The road running community is awesome, but the trail running community is like next level for sure. Talking about your relationship with community, what does community mean to you?
Yeah, I think to put on like what you just said, I think that what I first experienced when I came to trail running was that your competitors, because, okay, here's kind of what happens. You're out in the middle of nowhere and it's a small race. It might be 100 people. And so it's a little different feel than, which isn't better per se, by the way, but it's different feel than running in a 40 or 50,000 person road race. And you would hang out with your competitors after the race. And it was great. So I think and people were just so welcoming. They're really cool. So I think that piece of community, like literally being at a trail race and being like, oh, like one, it's in this cool location. 2, the people who live in that community. Like if you're near a ski resort in New Hampshire, like those people are volunteering, they're there, they care about it, and they love it. And then 3, being able to like your competitors, those who raced in it, elites, non-elites, just coming together to like have a beer after the race. That was like the community I really started to feel. So I think that's like the start of what I think about when I think about the trail community.
I love that. One of my favorite realizations was from my first episode with Kara Goucher after she ran Leadville Trail Marathon. And she went into it thinking that she'd win or do really well. And she got her butt handed to her. And she said several times it was the hardest thing she'd ever done in her life, including childbirth. Which she like reaffirmed several times, and then reaffirmed it again the episode we did this past summer, 3 years later. And what was really cool about what she said was, I got my ass handed to me, and I expected, like, she was embarrassed, or she thought she should be embarrassed given what her perceived expectations were of her. And she was like, all people cared about was if I had fun and if I enjoyed the snacks that were on the trail. And like, they didn't give a shit that she came in 6th. And it was like, oh, how much fun did you have out there? And meanwhile, she's like sulking that like she didn't win. And she's like, that's when it clicked. That's when I realized like, this is so different. And again, I don't want to disparage road running, because I love road running. I love racing marathons, perhaps too much. And, it's a different vibe. I've said that a million times, and people who are listening to this podcast are probably rolling their eyes and saying, okay, we've heard this. We heard this over and over, dude, move on. But, I just invite anyone who hasn't been to a trail race to go to a trail race, whether it's a 5K, a 10K, or do your best to get to a 100-miler one day. And it's a wild environment. And then you have these like festival experiences like the Rut, like Broken Arrow, like any of these, where it's like 3 days of fun, and there are races and beer and pizza and like all this stuff that just makes it more than just running. And I think that's the future, honestly. These like 3-day experiences in a mountain town or at a resort or something like that, where there's some aspect of like an elite folks and prize money, but the bulk of people go because of the environment and the community feel. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, I am curious about your definition. I like asking definitions and like define this. Curious your definition of success. What does success mean to you?
Mm. Well, it's funny because I'm thinking like about the trail team a lot right now. So I think, man, there's a lot of things going on with that. I think personally, man, I think success is external and internal. Like you're saying, I think there's like objective goals I want to do as an athlete. There's things where like you're saying there's this yin and yang with road racing and trail racing. And those are always part of my life where I want to win races. I want to win the world championships. I've gotten second and third and fifth, and I want to win. That's like a successful goal. Um, but then I also think that there's totally a piece for did you have fun, the Kara Goucher thing. And so that's definitely more internal. And if you're so focused on these external rewards or things, you're missing kind of the point. So kind of along the lines of this team that I've been thinking about night and day for the last month, at least 5 years. Um, Success is just like getting the community going, like getting people excited. And I think I've already done that. And so I'm like, this is great. I like can't lose in terms of what I'm doing. And so that's such a different goal, I guess, because it's not about raising X amount of money or having someone win the Olympics or something. It's like just a lot more soft and kind of like a feeling.
How do you balance as you said, the soft definition with you're a professional athlete? You have a contract with a bunch of brands. They probably expect you to perform in some capacity, but fun is the like anchor, right? I had a conversation with Aisha Protlier a couple years ago, and she's like, I'm 30 years old and I've been running for 50 years and I wouldn't still be doing it if it weren't fun. And it's cool to see that as the anchor point, or I don't know if anchor point is the word, but like North Star perhaps. And like you can't have performance if you're not enjoying it, at least over the long run or for the long run. So I'm curious your relationship with fun versus like this is a job and it pays your bills as well.
Yeah. Well, first off, it doesn't pay the bills. So which I think has been good for me. I've never had a contract that would pay for me to live and eat food in Boulder at a bare minimum, which I think I should be grateful for. Like sometimes you're like, oh, I wish I had this bigger deal or something, but I've basically always worked full time, sometimes many jobs at once, still sort of doing that, just to make life work with running. And I think so when you're asking this, I read this book. It was probably a year ago. I'm going to blank on the name right now, but it was essentially just about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and how extrinsic motivation, things like money, it's not fulfilling. It might get you excited for 10 seconds. If you run a mile, you get a chocolate bar, but it doesn't last. And so to be 34 years old and still racing and doing things that are the hardest things you could possibly do, like if you're trying to break your PR, sometimes you have to run harder than you've ever run before. You need to be intrinsically motivated. It has to be about some goal that is like deeply meaningful to you. And that's been more clear to me this year than I think ever. And I think like as I've become an older athlete and someone who's more established in the sport, and when I've gotten bigger financial opportunities, it doesn't change anything. And you think it does. It's such a like a fallacy, like a misconception to think that, oh, this is going to be better because of the money. Like this race I did this year, maybe I shouldn't go into too many details, but it was like a road race and I won like some money from it. And it was like the least gratifying race I've ever done. And it was like, I think at the time it had tied the most amount of money I'd ever won in a race. And so it was like, it really reaffirmed like, don't do it for the money. Don't do it for other people. You have to do it for yourself.
Well, it's like process versus outcome, and the like check-ins of here's a check, you won this race or whatnot. Like that's sort of the bumpers on the side. But Amelia Boone has talked about this at length, where she was struggling in the early 2010s and 12, 13, 14, etc., where like she felt she must win everything, and it was like not fun and incredibly stressful, and it was like a moving goalpost. and it was, okay, I won this race. Check the box. Whew, that was a relief. And now you look at her and the joy that she has with the sport. Like maybe she's not running as fast as she was, but she's certainly enjoying it more, and appears on the outside as a more fulfilled person. And there's a lot to that, and there's a lot of value in like being fulfilled versus it's it's not fulfilling to do things that aren't fun just to check a box, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's like I hear you struggling for words for this too, because I think it's hard to find what that means,
Yeah.
because like people love that internal challenge. Like that could be the reward. People like the pure enjoyment of it, like you're saying with fun. But it's different things and it's different for different people, and it's different at 2 seconds later in a race when you're doing it for the right reasons and you're feeling fulfilled. So yeah.
And then they're like no better feeling than being completely thrashed and knowing you've just like emptied the tank and gone to the well and you've done something that you've never done before. So my PR marathon in 2019, I posted afterwards. I said, if you want something you've never done, you have to go to a place you've never been. And to me, that's the point of running, right? Like it's completely meaningless in isolation, right? We're doing this thing that's really hard. What's the point of that? If you can take what you've done and like apply it to other places in life and like take these lessons and you're doing, creating a team to enhance the next generation and their experience better and help them get through hurdles that, took you 2 years and help them do it in a month or things like that. Like just like pushing things forward, pushing things forward, pushing things forward. I feel that with this podcast where I get so many messages from people saying like, it's so cool to hear somebody talking about like the guest that is speaking directly to me, the experience that that they had in their go with XYZ is exactly what I'm going through right now. And I don't feel alone, like kind of a thing. And it's so cool to be able to like take these lessons of in an optional sport, we're choosing discomfort and we're growing from it. And like to me, that's the whole point. That's why we go to these super dark places. That's why we push our bodies to the limits. And from that day in May 2019, like I know that I can do hard things and I know that I can like get incredibly uncomfortable, whether that's in a 3-hour stretch, a 3-month stretch or whatever it might be. But like that's the point, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a really good way to put it.
What are you excited about most in 2023 outside of the trail team?
Yeah, man. I think I don't know why I'm feeling this way, but it's about doing things I haven't done and about community for me. And that keeps on coming up over and over again. So speaking of which, you're like, everyone should go to a 100-miler. I've never been to a 100-miler in person. And I have a lot of really good friends who I want to crew. So I'm hoping I can crew some of my friends at an ultra this year. That's one of the things I'm most excited about. Another thing I'm most excited about would be, let's see, I'm always excited about racing. I love racing. So that's going to be cool. But I'm really happy with kind of this building phase right now during the winter that maybe a lot of people might be in, where you're just like, this is time to put in the hard work and go out and freeze yourself in the snow in Canada, for instance, and hope that pays off in the summer. But yeah, I think that's kind of the gist. It's simple, but those two main things, just kind of helping friends who I haven't before and just get out and racing again.
Cool. You'll be blown away by the experience of a 100-miler. It's exhausting and so fulfilling to crew someone. A question I asked to everyone that lives in a town like Boulder or Flagstaff or whatnot, what is your relationship with like this comparison trap, or is it something you struggle with? And I did a podcast with Matt Daniels a few years ago, and he joked that Boulder Average is having a shoe sponsor. And he's like, I've run sub 4, but like 3 dudes on my block have run sub 4. Like, so curious in this, like you live in a house of athletes, and we're in this town where like there are so many Olympians, so many professional athletes. Do you think about that at all? Is it something that has been challenging for you?
I'd say the opposite for my first thought. And that's because, like, just for example, I walk in the grocery store in like short shorts and like winter boots and like go buy my groceries and no one cares. It's awesome. And I like really love that acceptance in Boulder and just being like, yeah, I fit in. Like I've always felt like kind of a whatever the expression is, square peg in a round hole or something. And Boulder is like, oh yeah, I can just be myself.
Yeah, you can wear athletic clothing anywhere in this town.
Yeah, especially really short shorts. No one cares. Great. But yeah, there's occasionally I'd say I remember specifically like, let's bring it to the roads. Like I've run Gate River Run, the US 15K champs 8 times. I think I've run it a bunch. And I think the first couple of years I was like, oh, I just want to be the first guy from Colorado. And then you're like, oh, I'm like the third guy from Boulder. And so, after the 8th time, I'm like, oh, that's fine. Like I'm the top 3 from Boulder. That's good. Even though we're in Florida running a US champs. So they can't even narrow it down to the state, or you got to go all the way down to the city level. Maybe like part
your
of Boulder,
neighborhood.
and the top guy from North Boulder.
That's awesome. It's like such a humbling experience, I would imagine. But yeah, I love you can go anywhere in spandex, or like you can be disgusting and go pick up your bagel from Wood Grain and just like reek of dirty trails, and it's totally normal.
Yeah, exactly.
I've done that so many times coming down from Ned. Just like, all right, we're getting bagels and we stink.
Yeah.
I love that. Tell me about a time when you experienced a failure or something that really didn't go your way, and maybe it was like really challenging in that moment, but you're better for it. And the reason I ask is like this experience of failing, like it's such a universal experience, and a lot of people feel alone or isolated when they don't do something right or don't do what they plan to do, because social media is often a highlight reel. And so I love hearing about like less than ideal experiences, because it normalizes that like that's not the normal experience, or it is the normal experience.
Yeah. No, yeah, there's a lot of failure. There's a lot of 10-minute miles, like we were talking about before. You're right. Social media is a highlight reel, so it's so biased. There's a funny story, actually, really quickly, but I grew up with my grandmother, who's deceased now. But when I was in college, she's like, "All you do is party." I was like, literally, I'm like super nerdy, and all I do is study. But I would post like one picture on Facebook of me like going to a party, and she'd be like, "All you do is party." But yeah, I think, man, for me, the last 2 years have been super challenging. I've been injured, dealing with like an Achilles injury. I had to take from May till September, whatever that is, off last year, 5 months. And kind of the first thing that comes to mind, there's probably a million, but I was obsessed with FKT, still am, and especially in 2020, 2021. And so kind of the normal for me is like, oh, I'd find one, I'd go do it. I'd like not even check out the course. I would just run it as hard as I could and I'd get the FKT. Right. And so like that was kind of the expectation for a couple of these. And then a couple of them I started hitting. So for example, one was this really cool route called the 10-mile traverse that goes across kind of all the mountains in Breckenridge. So across,
absolutely stunning.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it's nuts because you just start at the bottom, you go up 3,000 feet and you just traverse this ridge line that is all the ski area of Breckenridge. And then you off trail straight down the ski slopes to the town. So, and it's not short. I think, I can't remember the distance and
like
stuff.
20 miles, right?
Yeah. It takes like 3.5, 4 hours, something like that ballpark. So the first time I did that, I started running down what I thought was the trail, but was actually the Colorado Trail, which is, it's not the ridge line like that you're supposed to be on. And so I think I went down like a mile downhill when I was in the middle of this ridge. And so I turned around and I was like, oh no. And you just got to like tell yourself like, oh, I'm in the middle of this like race thing, FKT. And so I'm walking back up the hill and basically knew I blew it. I was like, you can't waste 15 minutes or whatever that is on, which it was way longer than that. Just probably, fast mile down and then a 20-minute mile up the mountain. So yeah, that was hard, but I think like the point was, so I did the whole point to point, missed the time by 20 minutes and was like, well, that was dumb. All I did was this wrong turn. And I came back a month later, and even though it's 4-hour run, I did it again and I got the time. And so like, that's like an easy success story because it only took 2 tries. But for me, like mentally saying, hey, I'm going to come back and run this 4-hour really hard thing that I just gave my best effort on. And I just blew it because I took a wrong turn. It's like, it is hard, right? Like you go and you're like, you got to be psyched to do it. And so it's cool because it's a success story because I came back and got the time. But I did that over and over and over and over again the last 2 years, basically. So specifically, like, again, what's coming to mind is I think I did that with like 3 or 4 different FKTs where I took a wrong turn and you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm like running as hard as I could down a hill and I just blew it. And you're like that 1 second of like where like a bug hit your eye, then you're like going down this one, it's called High Lonesome Loop. Have you ever run that? It's near Boulder.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. First time I did that, I like somehow just ended up, this is like trail running. All of a sudden I was running down a waterfall and I was like, that's not a trail. I thought it was a trail. It's like the trail was flooded or something. And so I was just like, oh yeah, this looks right. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, it's getting like really steep and it's rocky. And I just dropped down like 300 feet and that doesn't make any sense. So,
where is there a waterfall on that route?
It's on Kings Lake Trail on the way back. I don't know. If you hit it, you'll know it. There's a nice little stream. If you're going counterclockwise, there's a nice stream crossing that's like probably 75% of the way in. And in the summer, it's funny because you cross it's kind of hard to explain, but you cross the river and you got to go like a little left and the river kind of goes a little right. And so it's like, it looks like either makes sense. And for some reason you're like, oh, I'll just run along the side of this. It's probably like a little picnic trail that someone made like alongside the river.
I thought you were going to say you ended up like in Winter Park or something. Like on the other side.
Not quite. That would have been bad. Yeah, but I think, those are just like really specific FKT examples where you get lost or something. But like everything that's worthwhile is challenging, and everything that's worthwhile takes 150 mistakes to get it right one time. And that one time is really special and magical. But there's a lot of, there's 140 less exciting things. And that's what you're saying with like pros running 10-minute miles or the workouts that you don't hit over and over again. Like, here's one more quick story. And this is funny because I do like strength training with Jake Riley, Olympian marathoner Jake Riley, who's really fast. And I just told him this story and he was like, oh, I don't remember that. And it makes him look bad, but he was joking. We were laughing about it. But I was getting ready for Houston half marathon, like this time of year, several years ago. And I was coming off a trail season. I was like super tired. I'd only been running slow on trails relatively, like no 440 miles or whatever I'm supposed to be running at Houston. And Jake and I were both on the track in Boulder. And I was like, Jake, super psyched. I just finished this workout. I just did 3 by a mile at 5 flat. Like I'm ready for Houston. And he's like, there's no way you're going to run 105, like 5 flat at Houston if you just ran the pace for 3 miles with breaks in between. He's like, there's no way. And I was like, oh, that was like my indicator. I'm ready. I have like 2 weeks. I'm ready to go. This wasn't that long ago. And I ran 105, but it was just really funny because it's like, yeah, like you got to take the little victories and not everything's just like this, 20 miles at pace where you're like, of course I'm going to do it. Like sometimes you got to have confidence and you got to know that little successes will get you there.
Totally. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's a good place to wrap today. So for those who don't follow you or they're tuning in and they're learning about your team, where can find you?
Yeah, find me on Instagram at _trail_team, or I'm at Wacker, Wackera. And those are good places to start. So thanks for listening.
Awesome. And whether it's at a soft hour here in Boulder or a trail in Tahoe, looking forward to sharing some more miles with you soon.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next time on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too. This podcast and the accompanying music has been produced by Brian Walters of Single Track Sound. For the Long Run's logo was created by Vanessa Wolf of Sterling Wolf. Show notes have been written by Ruby Wiles and is managed by Emily Holland. It takes a village.